Hi. Well, my name is Luna and this is my bedtime story for you. Fluff up your pillow and do get comfy. Oh, by the way, please click subscribe and hit the thumbs up button. Thank you, and let's get started. Don't forget what day it is, Mallory. My mother shouted at me as I grabbed my house keys off the coffee table. Yes, thank you, Mom. I'm not stupid, I said, as I rushed out. I was planning on meeting Roy, Melanie and JJ at the local park, and we were desperate to find out if everything that has ever happened in this town was true. We wanted to know if the legend of the drummers was true. After all, Christmas was right around the corner and the town of Angel Hills has been shrouded in mystery and inundated with strange events recently. We were curious kids. Growing up in the town of Angel Hills hasn't always been easy. It's a town full of tragedy, full of loss, despair, and most importantly, the unexplainable. So understandably, my parents had always been careful, superstitious if you will. So I couldn't tell my mother about the plans I had for that night. She would have locked me in the basement and would have never let me out. I didn't know then how right she was to believe everything. I wish I did. Maybe Roy and JJ would still be here. We met that afternoon. It was Christmas Eve and we were eager to get an early start. It got dark so quickly in those winter months, but especially in Angel Hills. It was as if the town itself attracted darkness, absorbed it. Yeah, I know how that sounds, but it's true. Despite everything, we weren't scared. We weren't scared of anything. Maybe that's just the nature of being a kid. You have no fear of the unknown. It just doesn't touch you. You think you're invincible. It's stupid, of course, but hindsight isn't something you possess as a ballsy child. And we were ballsy. You're late, Mallory. Roy was the leader of our group. This whole thing was his idea. He was the one that planted that curiosity in our heads. All he ever talked about was the most recent horrific murder of Mr. Partridge. We couldn't fathom the circumstances surrounding his mysterious death. In fact, no one could. Despite the mystery that perpetually enveloped this town, this was the first brutal murder we have had for years. I remember when it happened, our parents talked in hushed whispers that whole night, fear just radiating off of them. After that, our parents put us all on a very tight leash. But it was Christmas and nothing was going to stop our fun. I'm here, aren't I? I had to make excuses with Mom. It wasn't easy. You know how terrified everyone is right now, I said firmly. Where are the others? Getting some fuel for the night, Roy said. JJ and Melanie rushed out of the grocery store, bags in hand. I could hear the clink of the bottles and the crunch of the bags, and I knew we were set for the night. Set to explore the mysteries of Angel Hills. Are we ready? Roy asked. It was difficult to miss the twinkle in his eyes. It was the excitement that all of us felt. We all nodded in unison and made our way into the woods. Legend had it that the drummers began their ghostly walk deep in those woods, and we wanted to be the first kids to see them because no one ever has. The tale of the drummers first started to circulate in the town of Angel Hills Christmas 1912. The reports were all sketchy, inconclusive, but one thing that all the stories had in common was that from Christmas Eve night all the way through to Christmas morning, people of Angel Hills heard ominous drumming echo across the town. Simultaneously. Every single person could hear it. The peculiar thing was, no one could ever see anything. No one could ever discern or pinpoint the location from which the drumming was coming from. In fact, it seemed to be coming from everywhere, all at once. Ever since then, Every Christmas without fail, the drumming would be heard. I'm a pretty heavy sleeper, so I've never heard it, which made my curiosity even stronger. Some of my friends have, including Roy and also my mom and dad. I couldn't believe in something I've never witnessed though, so I was excited that night. When does it usually start? I asked Troy. Around 10 every year, it's like clockwork, he said, taking a swig of beer. It's 9:30 now, said JJ, her eyes glowing like Christmas lights. Not long, said Melanie. That last half an hour flew by. We talked about everything that's ever happened in Angel Hills some more, and were generally having a great Christmas Eve. We'd almost forgotten why we were there when we heard it. It started off slow, quite faint at first. But as the streets grew quieter and quieter, the sound increased. It was the sound of a drum, unmistakably. Slow and deliberate but with no rhythm. As they drew closer, I could hear something else too. The scraping of bone, as if someone was grazing bones together over and over. It sent shivers down my spine. I glanced over at the others and they too were as mesmerized and terrified as me. Do you hear that? Asked Troy, a wide grin spread across his face. I nodded. When I looked over at JJ and Melanie, they were gone. I could see them ahead, walking closer toward the drumming. What the fuck are they doing? I asked, panic-dogged my voice. Before I could do anything, Roy rushed after them. Not wanting to be left alone, I followed. As I followed, I realized just how dense this forest was. It was impossible to see. The darkness did nothing to alleviate my fears. I saw Roy's shadow ahead, but I couldn't see JJ or Melanie. I tried to keep up, but somehow, they were way ahead of me. The drumming grew louder, had become almost deafening. I tried to call out, but I couldn't hear my own voice. There was no sound escaping my mouth. Had I gone deaf? It was as if the drums were beating inside my own head. That was when I saw them. The 12 drummers. They were real. They walked in unison as they beat the aged cylinders. As they got closer, my eyes widened in horror at the sight of them. There were women, men and children, all different ages. Their flesh hung off them limply like bits of skinned meat. They were walking, rotting corpses. Their eyes were as wide as milk and their faces were devoid of any emotion, blank canvases. They simply stared ahead. They were walking with a purpose though. I saw Roy, JJ and Melanie. I rushed forward calling their names. They couldn't hear me. My own voice still sounded muffled, like I was shouting with padded headphones on. What the world was going on? I had never felt fear like that before, and I don't think I ever will. It was primal. All I wanted was to get out of there, but my friends, I couldn't abandon them. I crept silently toward Roy, JJ and Melanie. They were standing right out in the open. The drummers would see them and I knew that nothing good would come of it, if they were noticed. I felt it deep in my heart. Before I could do anything, the drummers stopped, right in front of them. Roy, JJ and Melanie remained immobile, as if mesmerized. Then one of the walking corpses grabbed Roy, grasped him right by the throat. I watched as the eyes of this terrifying creature went blood red, its mouth opened, far too wide, and then it started to suck. That's the only way I could describe it. Roy's body seized up, went as rigid as a piece of wood. This monstrous thing was inhaling Roy. His body tightened, shriveled up and went purple. He looked like he'd lost about 10 pounds, as if all the life had been drained from him. One of the others grabbed JJ and did the same. Her body fell limply to the ground, dead. I don't know what came over me, but I ran to Melanie and I yanked her, hard. She seemed to come to her senses, and as soon as she saw the withered bodies of Roy and JJ, she screamed, a piercing scream, like that of a perishing coyote. Then we ran. The bodies of Roy and JJ were never found, not a trace. The police questioned us, but who would believe such a ludicrous story? There was already so much going on in our town, so many unexplainable and bizarre things, things you could only dream up in your worst nightmare. In the end, everyone just settled on believing that JJ and Roy were runaways, and hell, I think that's a better end than the one they actually met. I still can't explain what happened that night. I don't think my brain has processed the trauma of seeing what I saw. It's one thing hearing rumors, and Angel Hills is full of them, but seeing one of them come to life? That's another story, the icing on a blood-covered cake. Angel Hill is that cake, each layer reveals something horrifying. Something you could never forget. I haven't forgotten that night. One thing I do know though, is that I will never again follow the deathly drums of the 12 drummers, and neither should you. That's it for that story, guys. How about it? Can you go to sleep now? If you have a story too, please do email me your story. I place my email on my description box. Till next time, bye.